Hi, I'm Bruton Jones, and I'm the production designer for Underworld. The production designer is the visual architect of the whole film, so everyone takes his visual cues from this. We're creating this visual world, and it have to have a sense of history. It's not something that just happened overnight, that they've been around since the 13th, 14th century.
The thing that I really enjoy about working with Bruton is that he draws so much better than I do, which is really comforting to me that I can slave over one of my own drawings and put as much thought and detail into it, and I pass it off to him, and I know that 2-3 days later I'm going to get a drawing back from him that has such an epic level to it, to my design.
He gives me ideas and I bounce off ideas off of him so that we go back and forth. So it's always a consistent collaborative effort, and it constantly evolves. And overall, the idea is to get the maximum impact visually of what we're trying to tell a story or create the world for. You had to show that there's a consistent history, whether it's through the wardrobe, through the props, through the environment themselves, and as well as with the design elements, and such as the flooring and the sarcophagus and the mansion itself. The mansion was something that was built in the 16th century, so it was around 1782, and so it had a more Baroque feel to it. But that went along with everything else, it being the mansion was built up around the crypt and how the crypt sort of evolved. I'm sure that as we get further into history, whether the vampires exist in that location or not, they might even be in a Corbusier-inspired or a Frank Gehry-inspired building, but within the center core of that structure will be the crypt itself.
Well, the concept for the mansion, we had actually found a location that I really liked. I think it was a library, and it had this great ornate architecture, just the detailing in the banisters and all the woodwork, but it was very red wood, kind of brown tones, and it didn't necessarily fit into the world that I was trying to create. So again, what I would do is I'd take take stills of that mansion, bring them into the computer, tweak the color, bring down, desaturate it, and then just compare and then see if that didn't, in fact fit into the world that I was trying to create.
The Celtic designs came from information, researching from Danny the writer and Lynn himself, sort of to give the vampires sort of a sense of history of where their culture started and then where it was going to end up. At a glance, they do seem like Celtic symbols. There's a little bit of tribalism, and then there's some Italian references as well because of the whole Roman occupation and the spread of the Roman Empire. The concept behind Singe's lab was that Singe had to be a sort of a Renaissance man. When I was conceptualizing the underworld itself, in order to give it a sense of history and design, it took a key that during the Hungarian religious society, there was a point in which Catholics had to go underground, and so they established these underground churches. And so I thought that was a very cool element to work with, sort of to give the Lycan sort of a mercenary, religious land.
The Underworld location was the last location that we found, which was a bit stressful because it was also the largest one that we had to adapt and do partial build. So once we found, I think it was a steel factory, I fell in love with that location. I really liked how it looked, but then we had to decide how it made sense. What was this place? So I got together with Bruton and Danny. We all kind of sat around and talked about what would make the most sense of what this environment was. And we talked about it being some form of a bunker, or like an old weapons factory. And so a lot of those ideas were thrown back and forth, and then Bruton just took it and went with it, and it became his little movie of what the Underworld location was. And it was really cool. I really loved what he did with it in the end.
And given the looks for the vampires and the lichens, the werewolves, we wanted to definitely establish the fact that throughout history, the vampires have always been sort of a part of aristocracy, and the werewolves or lichens have always been indentured servants to the vampires. The vampires were a little bit more detailed, a little bit more historical elements throughout there, and the rich fabrics that would establish them as being like upper class, and definitely the lichens to be more lower class, as it were. And because in the history of the vampires and or the war between the vampires and werewolves, the lichens had to become more survivalist, more mercenary-like, and so that sort of dictates the way their clothes would be, because they had to basically survive with what they had.
Well, the design for Selene's costume, it was actually one of the first drawings that I had done while we were writing. And I did a few sketches just so I could see for myself what kind of tone was going to be set for even all the other death dealers. So I took those initial drawings to Wendy Partridge, our costume designer, and said, let's just start here and start to build in this direction and see what happens. And it actually ended up, the final product was really close to the original drawing. And so Wendy went through a lot of headaches with me about fabrics and what exactly to use for the suit, because I was really picky about wrinkles, and I'd seen a lot of leather costumes in the past that had, if they buckle too much or there's too many wrinkles and everything, or if it looks too plastic, it can just look trashy. And I think that women's shoulders and neck and everything is really sexy and can be really cool, but it has to look just like glass.
The props they're kind of like logos for each character, sort of their weapon of choice. Selene had her stars that were sort of based off of martial arts. The whips were a little bit more Spanish. And then there was a lot of sort of industrial design and development in those twin whips, because it had to look like they were pretty effective and evil themselves with all the metal hooks that were on them. So you knew that whatever they touched, they were doing the job efficiently.
Creating UV bullets, again, was something that I used some pictures and brought them in the computer just to see what it would look like, and then just started playing around with some different kind of looks for the bullets. Part glass, part metal, and then putting them together in a clip and what that would look like. And it was kind of my first time working with a computer and trying to build something and put it together, and found something that I liked, and then handed that over to the prop guys to make it. And they actually, I was really impressed with them translating the art that I had done into the final product. I thought was identical.
Ultraviolet ammunition.
I think design for a film like this is incredibly important, because you're dealing with surreal characters, vampires and werewolves, and I think it's important to create a world that will be able to embody those kind of characters. I mean, for me at least, I think it shouldn't be a world that you can step out of your own house and go see or take a drive to. So it was important for me to create a world that felt very surreal and fit the characters. So I think we did a good job in doing that. I think we succeeded.